My name is Jane Borowski. In 1988, when I was just 22 years old, I was attacked and stabbed 27 times and left for dead. I am a survivor. In the 1970s and 80s, women's bodies started to surface in the Connecticut River Valley between New Hampshire and Vermont. Is my case related to these cases? This is unknown. Why? Because all the cases still remain unsolved. Are all the cases related in the work of one serial killer? We don't know that either. But law enforcement did form a task force in the 80s to investigate all of them. I've joined forces with my co-hosts Amanda and Drew. Together, we are a voice for the voiceless. We advocate for those who cannot advocate for themselves while remaining factual and engaging with empathy. The Invisible Tears team is transparent and opinionated, never claiming to be anything we are not. We aren't law enforcement, we aren't private investigators or journalists. We are victim advocates who care and want to help families.
So make sure you subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any episodes. You can find us on all platforms through our link tree in the show notes. There you can find our social media platforms, our YouTube, and our website with our merch. You can also find our Patreon there. So if you're interested in supporting and joining the Invisible Tears team, join our Patreon today. And as always, ratings and recommendations help our podcast in algorithms. So if you haven't shown us some love and given us a 5-star rating and review, please do so. We appreciate each and every one of you and your continued support.
Welcome to Invisible Tears. I'm Jane, co-host of Invisible Tears, and I'm here with my other co-host, Amanda. How are you?
I'm doing great, Jane. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Today we're covering Debbie Ann Quimby.
Yep.
And you did an amazing job researching her disappearance. And so I'm going to pass it over to you. I've read your overview a few times, and I'm going to pass it over to you, though, so you can read and I'll chime in, and we will cover Debbie.
That sounds great. Thanks, Jane. Yeah, so I mean, you guys requested it. We've dropped a couple of hints that we were going to actually end up covering it. So I wanted to make sure that we got our overview about Judith Buick out first before we actually covered the disappearance of Debbie Ann Quimby with you guys. And you all will understand why as I get into the overview, why everybody, said you guys need to look at these cases. Not only was there a problem happening in the area during that time, but also there is some factors that actually connect those two individuals. So I'll get all into that. But I just want to say, especially when we're covering Debbie's case, that so much information actually exists out there about Debbie's case. It was really hard to organize it. I found literally over 200 articles in my research. And that was basically from Google, but also from the newspapers.com that I've mentioned that I pull sources from as well. So there was an abundance of information, a lot of repeat information. But for some reason, I found myself when I was covering this case, it really affected me mentally. I'm not exactly sure why. I think I may have figured it out now that I've completed the overview, but we've covered young girl unsolved missing or murdered cases before. But this one definitely distinctly struck a nerve with me. So it was a little bit hard for me to get through. So I'm going to make sure that I spend some time personally reflecting on that for all of you. And I'll let you know if I truly and distinctly figure it out, why it affected me so much doing this overview. It might be because I personally had a very similar jacket to the one that Debbie was actually wearing when she disappeared, the second that it was described. In the articles and everything that I was reading, I remembered mine. that I had. Or it could have also just been that, like, I remember just jumping on bikes with friends in the 80s and just, you leave your parents a note, we're going here, we're going to so and so's house, or, and just sort of like reminded me of childhood.
That
I know.
was me.
Yep.
That was the exact perception I got when I started reading it. It was like I can remember being 10, 11, 12 years old, riding my bike everywhere in the 80s and actually 70s,
Yep.
and not worrying about anything. And then I read this and I'm like, oh my God, that could have been me. Um, it was eye opening.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember, I mean, literally, this is exactly my childhood, right? So, and even, much younger, even that, I mean, as young as like 5, 6, I can remember doing this with the neighborhood friends. So, yeah, it definitely struck a nerve, affected me personally. I'm realizing that sometimes probably like the consumption of the information that we cover is going to be difficult, but I'm going to keep on doing it. These cases deserve to be covered
Yes.
in a moral and empathic way. And I want them to receive justice, however that may actually end up being possible.
Very well said.
Thank you. All right. So we're going to start from the beginning, like we always like to do, and talk about Debbie and her family. So Debbie Ann Quimby. So her full name is Deborah Ann Quimby, but everybody called her Debbie. So for the most part, I'm going to call her Debbie throughout this episode. So Debbie was born on October 9th, 1963 to Ann and Richard Quimby. In my research, I actually found Ann and Richard's wedding announcement.
I saw that. That was so cool.
So their wedding announcement was in the Fitchburg Sentinel on January 11th, 1963. So just doing some rough math right there, they basically got married and had Debbie. So they started their family right after they got married. And I did see that Debbie had a younger sister. I read that in other articles that occurred a little bit later on. So as of this recording, I know that she has a younger sister named Nancy. And as of 3 years ago, she's married with 2 children. Debbie's mom, Ann, actually went to New England College in Henniker and Keith State College and Fitchburg College for teaching.
That was interesting.
I know. And at the time of her wedding, it was announced in that article that she was employed at the New England Business Service in Townsend, Massachusetts. I also know that she later on went on to become a second grade teacher at Spalding Memorial School in Townsend, Mass. That may sound a little bit familiar to our listeners. Debbie's father, Richard, was serving in the Navy in Norfolk, Virginia when he married Ann. After his service, so he spent a few years in the service, and after his service, he worked as a self-employed welder in the building and remodeling industry. So he held lots of different jobs in manufacturing, engineering, and fabricating companies throughout his life. So he was handy. He loved to build. I also saw a note that he loved his motorcycle. So he had a motorcycle too.
Yeah.
Yep. So now Debbie was a lifelong resident of Townsend, Massachusetts, as were her parents, as were her grandparents. Okay. So when this case was originally brought up to us, many people said, you need to look at this case as well as Judith's case because Debbie's grandfather worked with Judith. And I was like, okay, that's why we covered Judy first. So in fact, the year that Debbie Quimby started 4th grade was the year that Judith Fewig, that 4th grade art teacher at Spalding Memorial School, was murdered.
Okay.
Yeah. I think because of the size of the town and because of these families knowing each other, that's why people tend to link these guys together, right? One thing we do have to remember, though, is how small this town was. Remember, this was in the 70s, right?
It was really small, like
Yes.
really small. I did a lot of research on it, and it was very small.
Yeah. And also that there were actually multiple people in Debbie's family that were actually either teachers or employed by the school system, right? So even her mom was, right? So both her mom and her grandfather were in fact employed by the school. I was able to verify that. So I went back to her grandfather because that was the comment that I kept on hearing from people. His name was John Vern Quimby. I was able to come up with a couple of articles about him that were actually really interesting. The first article that popped up surprised me, and it was about an assault case that occurred during a basketball game. The article was published on February 14th of 1949. I know. Yeah, we're going back here. We're going back a little ways. And at the time, John Vern Quimby was the principal, the athletic director, and the basketball coach at Spalding Memorial High School. He was all of them.
Wow.
Yep. This article outlined that John ended up being arrested for assault and battery of an individual named Russell Gray. So it was an altercation that occurred during the high school basketball game between Townsend and Lunenburg. John, the coach, was allegedly involved with like a disagreement and an argument with a couple of game officials that just essentially like escalated. He was arguing with them about a fifth foul on one of his players. And the situation escalated so much that John ended up assaulting Russell Gray, who was a spectator during this argument, by backhanding him. Russell Gray actually ended up having facial bruising and his glasses were damaged.
That's quite the backslap.
Yes. Yes.
Backhand. Wow.
The article actually even said like he could have started a riot. It was a really intense game. These guys must have been rival schools or something.
Yeah,
like
they
that.
must have been. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So it was quite the scene, apparently. And well, in the article, he did plead not guilty. I don't know what actually ended up happening with that case. I didn't find any sort of follow-up articles or anything saying like the case was dropped or anything like that. It might have just been one of those things sort of pushed underneath the rug.
Yeah.
For the area, just because of who he was, right? He was the principal too. I did notice though that after this incident, any articles that actually mentioned him going forward, he started going by J. Vern Quimby. So almost like utilizing his middle name.
Yeah.
Could just be a coincidence, but I did notice that after that article was published. So, because there were many other articles that actually did exist stating that John was actually part of many like different like school boards and committees within the town. So like town school boards, you know, teaching school boards, that sort of thing. He was very involved with his local community. So I found an article that did link John Vern Quimby was actually the chairman of the school board committee in Townsend when Judith Buig was murdered. So it's clear that they did know each other.
Yeah.
As far as how close they were, I'm not sure. I don't know how close the families were or if they just knew of each other. So I'm like, these families both like grew up in the area, right? Because remember, Judith was the vice president of the Teachers Association for the school district when she was murdered. So
I'm going to guess they probably have seen each other at meetings, school meetings or anything like that. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yep. Me too. Yep. So it was my understanding that when Judith was murdered, that John was not the principal anymore in the school system. But he was involved with being like the athletic director. So he was still involved within the school, but he wasn't the actual principal. But I do know that he was the chairman of the school board committee because I actually found an article that stated that he started the school committee meeting with a moment of silence in memory of Judith and proceeded to announce that he and his colleagues were, quote, upset, disturbed, and provoked by this dastardly act.
I wonder what they mean by provoked.
I don't know. Yeah, it is interesting wording, isn't it?
It is. And that was quote unquote.
Yeah.
Upset, disturbed, and provoked by this dastardly act. I wonder why he called it that too.
I don't know.
He sounded angry.
He did sound angry.
Yeah. That's how I would perceive it.
Yeah. Me too. But I wasn't able to find anything else about like the connection between like Quimby and Buig family though. So just that work connection just through the school, right? So I understand why people are saying that. I mean, yes, certainly some odd circumstances there, but we do have to remember how small the town was. And with both the families being involved with the school,
Yeah.
I'll just put that out there. So now that we've covered that, let's actually get back to Debbie, right? So in May of 1977, Debbie was in 8th grade at the Spalding Memorial School, and she was 13 years old. She lived in Townsend, Mass. She was approximately 5'1", 120 pounds. She was Caucasian with brown hair, brown eyes, and freckles. The last time she was seen was in the afternoon of Tuesday, May 3rd of 1977. She left a note for her parents at her house. They lived on Smith Street, stating that she was going to ride her bike, which was a boy's brown Takara bicycle, from their home to her grandparents' place on Vinton Pond Road in West Townsend, Massachusetts. It was located near Pearl Hill State Park and was about 4 miles from their home. In the note, she stated she had some issues and was going to go think them through. So the note that she left has never actually been publicly put out there, like published. And in the note, she said that she would call later that day. It was verified that a friend went with Debbie as far as Turnpike Road in the woods near her grandparents' home, which ended up being about halfway there. So a friend went with her for a couple of miles, right? And then they turned around and went back to their home. So
The friend did.
The friend did, yes.
Okay.
Yep. So Debbie was last seen cresting a hill on Turnpike Road going westbound. But unfortunately, Debbie, none of her clothes or belongings and not even her bike have ever been recovered. When she disappeared, Debbie was wearing blue jeans, a multicolored shirt, and a royal blue Pop Warner cheerleader's jacket with Debbie written on one of the sleeves. Yes, back in the day, they used to do that for Pop Warner cheerleaders.
Yeah.
They used to actually give you customized jackets.
Now, I did a little bit of research because that road sounded so familiar to me. That Turnpike Road is right off of Route 119. And 119 runs from New Hampshire all the way to Massachusetts and through Massachusetts. So I did notice that. That was quite interesting to me because I didn't realize that she would be so close to town. Because where that road is, I guess depending on where on that road she is, that road goes right down into the center of town on Route 119.
Interesting. Okay, that's great information to know. I'm getting a little bit more of a visual now, so that's good. Thanks, Jane. So when Debbie didn't call, her parents obviously started looking for her, right? And first place they went up to her grandparents' camp and found no trace of her. So as they were looking around, found no trace, didn't find her up at her grandparents' place, they called the police to report her missing. After her disappearance, police found an undelivered letter in her locker, in Debbie's locker. And while its full contents have never been published, it apparently was written to a friend where Debbie stated that she was upset and wanted to talk to her. It also gave directions to her grandparents' house and also may have even contained a drawn map for the directions. But it was never delivered.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And it doesn't say who the friend was or if the friend ever met up with her, anything like that.
Right. I'm not sure what the letter actually says because it wasn't actually published. It may, and the police may just have never put out that detail. So not sure.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yep. So searches ensued for the missing girl. And within 3 weeks, the Nashua Telegraph reported that Massachusetts State Police, area police departments, and 7 New Hampshire departments had instituted extensive searches for Debbie, as well as a special alert that was in effect in all area and state departments about Debbie. So it was plastered, like all of them actually started talking to each other. They also reported in that article that once that was occurring, Pepperell police had been flooded with reported sightings of Debbie. And while all the information was being forwarded over to like the Townsend investigating officers in the case, all the information that they had received were dead ends.
Now, Pepperell, if you keep going down Route 119, you go through Townsend, and Pepperell is the next town south. Or south, or I would say south of Townsend.
Okay, cool. So is Pepperell super close? Because I don't have a map in front of me, and I don't remember the last time I looked at it. Is Pepperell super close to Fitchburg?
Yeah, I would say
okay,
10-minute drive.
Okay.
Yeah. And Pepperell is very small, just like Townsend.
Okay. All right.
Or was past tense.
Was. Yeah, exactly. All these towns have possibly changed a bit since the 70s.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely have.
So the articles about Debbie essentially went cold until an extensive piece was written in the Hartford Courant on April 15th, 2001. It wasn't just about Debbie's case, though. It was an in-depth piece about all the missing children in New England. Reading this article broke my heart.
Me too. Yeah. I'm right with you, Amanda, on that one.
Yeah.
Shock. I was shocked.
Yeah. It was a really large article, and the title of it was, quote, "Why Are They Still Missing?" And it was written by Dave Altamari and Kevin Canfield. This piece outlined 59 missing children from Connecticut, Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Vermont, and Rhode Island. They really went in depth, looking at some of the cases closely, but mostly looking at the police department procedures and the statistics on what was happening. They found that child abduction cases often fall through the cracks. There's poor reporting and procedures in place. And they talked about missing teenagers and how those cases aren't taken seriously because initially it's always believed that they're runaways. It really was a good read, but definitely hard to read and consume as well.
Now, did they have years spanned, a span of years that these 59 children were missing?
Yep. Great question. They actually ended up having a chart, and they organized it by name, their age, the town where they ended up missing from or were found, and the date that they went missing. So this spanned from 1969 through 2001.
Wow.
Or 2000. Sorry. The article was published in 2001. It went up through 2000.
Wow.
Yep. And I mean, spanning an age, essentially, it's like as young as 4 up to 17, I believe.
Wow.
I mean, just to put it into perspective, up at the top of the article, and for those of you watching the visual, I'll show it on screen here. But don't worry, all these articles will actually be, attached to our show notes, and the physical articles itself will actually be on Patreon. I'll upload all the pictures of them. But yeah, up at that top of the article, some of the statistics were called out after it labels it for 59 stolen hearts. And it has pictures of some of the missing children. And under it, it also states, among New England's unsolved child abduction cases, most victims vanish from rural areas, with 9 walking the neighborhood, 7 playing in the neighborhood, 6 riding their bicycles, 5 walking to a convenience store, 4 walking to or from school, 4 playing at a playground, 4 at or on their way to work, 3 in a downtown area, 1 last seen at a friend's house, 1 at a parade, 1 sitting in a car, and 8 of those children is actually undetermined.
We have done all those things.
Yeah.
We have walked to and from school. We have rode our bicycles. We have walked to convenience stores. We have played in parks. Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It really is. And I just wanted to make sure and really call out this article with the title and with the authors, because I don't know if it ever actually led to any tips coming in about these cases. I'm sure that it did. It's a extremely well written, well composed, article that was put out there that outlined so many of these cases. But I don't know for a fact that it actually led to tips, but I do know that it helped to lead to some procedural changes in police departments. It really helped to outline the holes, the misassumptions, I guess you can say, and
Yeah.
the lack of procedure with departments actually talking to each other too, especially in a timely manner.
Yeah. I don't get how they can so quickly call a teenager missing a runaway.
I know.
That bothers me so much. Like, how do they do that? How do they do that? I don't get it.
I don't either. And I've seen before too, especially if it's a girl.
Yeah.
That's the initial assumption as well. And the piece of that that really bothers me is that, young girls, especially young girls, or if you think they're old enough to run away, right? Young teenagers and things like that, that immediately speaks to trafficking for me. It doesn't, my first thought isn't run away. My first thought is trafficking, but that's just me.
Yeah.
So essentially in all the cases with minors, time is of the essence.
Yes. That's what I think. I don't care if you think they're a runaway or not. Investigate, like heavily investigate, because you just don't know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, different pieces within this article, there's definitely family quotes, and some of the families don't hold back. The families are like, some of the family quotes are like, police never even investigated. Like, I'm a mom and I knew my daughter wasn't coming home and I knew something bad happened to her, but they didn't listen to me. It's stuff like that that's heartbreaking, right?
Yeah, it is. Yep, it is.
So that article was published in 2001. And then June 27th of 2004, literally the news exploded. Absolutely exploded. And I mean nationally exploded. Like, so much so that in the notes of this episode, I don't even have enough space to actually credit all of the articles that I found. All the pictures will be up on Patreon, but it was insane, the amount of coverage. I mean, almost every single state actually covered this case because of what was happening with Debbie's case. They covered it because the police were conducting a search on Walker Pond in Townsend, which would have been along the route that Debbie would have taken to get to her grandparents' house from where she lived the day she disappeared. This search ensued because of 2 anonymous letters that were sent to the Townsend Police Department. Now, both of the letters were typed, but with handwritten envelopes. The first letter was received in November of 2002, and it instructed them to search for her body in Walker Pond. So the police, along with the state police and the environmental police, actually did a sonar search of the pond, but didn't find anything. The next letter was then received almost a year later in 2003, in the winter of 2003, with the envelope written in similar handwriting, again, a typed letter, instructing police to take a closer look at a specific section of the pond. So the letters have never actually been released to the public. They won't say exactly what the letters say. All police say is that they're pretty specific and we're putting stock in this, right? They also don't know. They've actually publicly said that they are anonymous. We do not know who wrote these letters. We would love to know who wrote these letters, but they are anonymous. They did release, though, that the postmarks of Worcester, Massachusetts, and Manchester, New Hampshire were present on the envelopes. But as people were zoning in and reporting on that, saying, oh, they had to have been sent from these areas, law enforcement made sure to actually put it out there that, hey, we're such a small town that we actually ship our mail out to be processed at both of those places. So it's completely possible that these letters could have actually originated from Townsend. I mean, it could have, or other smaller towns. Remember, that's the mail process, right?
Sure is.
Yep.
Been there, done that.
Yep. So police also verified that the letters were analyzed for any forensic clues, but nothing ever materialized in it. So they appropriately processed those pieces of evidence. So after that second letter was received, police put a lot of planning into what they were going to do to search Walker Pond. So while this news broke nationally on June 27th, the search actually started on June 15th. And there was a fairly large press conference about it where Debbie's parents were present and answered questions. So there's tons on almost all of the articles that were published. They had pictures of the search, or they had pictures of her parents at the podium. And some of them even had like direct quotes from her parents. Obviously, her parents were, hopeful and thankful, but the main theme was they just wanted answers so this could be put to rest. That was the main theme of all of their quotes. So just to talk a little bit about Walker Pond. So Walker Pond is a spring-fed pond and is about 2 acres in size.
Not large.
Nope. It's located 100 yards from Turnpike Road. So the first step that they were going to do with the plan was the pond was going to be drained and cadaver dogs were going to be brought in along with ground penetrating radar in order for them to excavate the area essentially by hand. Monitoring was going to be put in place around the clock to ensure there was no scene contamination. And once the pond was drained, they very quickly realized the bottom was so murky, it was just like quicksand.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. So they continued their search efforts, but it was really treacherous. They're quoted in saying they were working on very unstable temporary floating piers out there as they were working to try and find anything that was in the pond. So after about a week and a half, the local police actually ended up pausing the search and asked for help from the National Guard, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency.
Hello.
Yeah.
They asked for help.
They did.
I didn't know they did that.
It's a consistent theme within this overview. I knew it was going to be a breath of fresh air for you, Jane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love seeing it. I love seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
Wish more would do it, but
me too. Yeah. And when they asked for help, they publicly put it out there in the media and they let the media know and all the public know what they were doing. They said, we're looking for more equipment. We're looking for heavy equipment. And we're also looking for their tips from these agencies on how we should actually be proceeding. They wanted the search, that they wanted to find the answers with the search. So they asked for help.
Wow.
Yeah. So they ended up getting help.
Yeah.
And an excavator was actually brought in to aid in the sifting through the quicksand. In total, the search lasted 38 days.
That blew my mind when I read that.
Yeah.
38 days.
Yeah.
That's just amazing. That I can't even imagine. I don't think I've ever heard of a search going 38 straight days.
Yeah.
Ever. That was crazy. They were determined to find something.
They really were.
They really were. I mean, 38 days, that's a long time. And they also had somebody there 24/7 to make sure none of the area was contaminated. None of the possible evidence were contaminated. Yep. That just blew my mind.
I know. When I was pulling up some of these pieces of information, I just kept on being thankful at so many of the pieces that I was reading. Right.
Yeah.
I truly do not believe that this is a case where, dropped ball or missed opportunity or not utilizing appropriate resources at the right times. Everybody involved was really doing everything within their power or knowledge to really try and figure out answers.
Yeah. And that kind of brought me back to those letters. Like, those letters must have had some real significant information in them where they felt that they were very much legit.
Yeah.
Because, 38 days to try to find anything they could possibly find. That is, really think about that. That's almost 2 months.
Yeah.
Month and a half.
Yeah.
That is a long time.
So, in those 38 days, some items were recovered in the search, including a bicycle frame, some fabric pieces that they said was from clothing, and 2 buttons. But all of them were sent out for analysis, and none of them are believed to have belonged to Debbie.
That's
So,
so sad.
I know everything that was found was essentially inconclusive, right?
It's sad.
It is. So after that extensive search, the Townsend Police Department actually ended up, and this is coming from the chief, he actually ended up going back to the media pleading that the author of the letters come forward and give more detail. I guess in the second letter that was received, when it was like saying like go back and take a closer look, they had directed them to look in the north end of the pond. Another thing that was pretty clear was how much the chief and the police department were actually utilizing media.
Yeah, they were utilizing them a lot.
Mhm.
A lot.
Yep.
You know, getting back to like the north side of the pond. For one, I'm very shocked that they didn't find anything of Debbie's, because obviously those letters had some pretty specific information in them. I wonder, and I'm sure they did, but I wonder if the letters were directing them to the pond. I wonder if they actually did any search or digging outside of the pond on the north side of the pond.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's funny that 2 letters directed them to that pond. Whatever was in those letters sounded very legit to them. Sounds like it was detailed. They spent now not only 38 days, but think of the money that was spent on that search.
Yep.
The resources that were spent on that search, and to come up empty. I'm wondering if there was another clue in those letters that they were not following, and maybe they missed. Because maybe if they're talking about the pond, maybe not in the pond, but outside of the pond, north side of the pond. I wonder if they did any search over there.
It's a really great point. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure, but hey, maybe they will now after they hear this. Who knows? Yeah, I was really surprised that they didn't find anything that was connected to Debbie too.
Yeah, I was surprised, but I was also so disappointed. So disappointed. Sad.
Yeah.
I was sad to hear that they didn't find anything.
Me too. So then nothing was received again until early December of 2010. So the timing was interesting too, because, well, nothing was out in like the papers or the media about it. The FBI had been working with the Townsend Police Department. So the Townsend Police Department reached out to the FBI and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Apparently, they were working together, interviewing and re-interviewing and doing tons of work on this case. So it almost sounds as if, like, even though this case is really old, I don't actually think you can ever call it cold because of how much they've been consistently working on it and partnering with people to work on it. So the timing of the note, the next letter is interesting because they had been, working with the FBI, like I said, and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, but they had been interviewing and re-interviewing a number of people in the case.
Oh.
And then all of a sudden, boom, the letter shows up.
Mm-hmm. I wonder who knew that.
Yes, I wonder. So it was again an anonymous letter addressed to the Townsend Police Department. And the contents of that letter have never been publicized either. But this letter did lead to a small foot search in a wooded area along Turnpike Road, which would have been along the route that Debbie would have taken to her grandparents' place. The search, unfortunately, didn't turn up any evidence or anything like that. The police chief did say, though, publicly in some articles, any information anyone can provide, including the author of this letter, is certainly welcome information. Please let me know. So 3 anonymous letters in this case. So over the course of all the articles that I scoured to, it was quoted by police in different various times that there has been a good 10 to 12 persons of interest that were investigated in Debbie's case. Obviously, no names were ever publicized or anything like that, except one was publicized. And his name was Jeffrey Allen Ward. You guys remember that name? He was the one that was questioned in Judith Fewig's murder as well. He was the Townsend native that was incarcerated for rape and murder in Virginia. The one that escaped.
Yeah.
But was found. And so it was put out there that he was questioned about it, but he denied any involvement in Debbie's disappearance. Obviously, I think that police were thinking too, like, he doesn't have anything to lose with saying he's not connected or connected. Like, he's already incarcerated for the rest of his life. But he denied any involvement in Debbie's disappearance, and there's absolutely no evidence linking him to the case.
His name comes up a lot in all these cases.
That troublemaking Townsend native.
Jeez.
I know. Oh, and then in a final piece to this case that I'll sort of outline before we just digest and talk about it a little bit more. In a 2022 article published by the Daily American, they were talking about Debbie's case and 2 other cases. It was a really long article. Now, the 2 other cases that they were discussing was the case of Alicia Markovich and the case of Colleen Osborne. Now, Alicia was 15 when she went missing in 1987 from her father's home in Pennsylvania. She's never been found. It is believed that she was murdered. Colleen was 15 when she went missing in Florida in March of 1984. Her body did end up being found. Unfortunately, she was murdered. So both of those cases are still unsolved. So you might be wondering why this article was written and why there could be possibly like a connection to these cases.
One's Pennsylvania, one's Florida.
Right. And then Debbie's in Mass. Like, what's going on with that? I mean, they weren't, both the other girls, they were 15, but I mean, Debbie was 13. I mean, close in age, but it's like, were they connecting all these together? Well, that's because in both Alicia and Colleen's cases, anonymous letters were sent to the parents of the girls. Alicia's letter was postmarked from Manchester, New Hampshire, and Colleen's letter was postmarked from Bedford, New Hampshire. Alicia's letter was received in October of 2000, and Colleen's letter was received in March of 2001. So, no real evidence other than the oddity of these letters originating from the same area within the same time span of a few years, a range basically. But according to the article, it has definitely opened investigators' eyes.
Yeah, it would open my eyes. It did open my eyes. The postmarks. I mean, that's just New Hampshire down to Florida, from New Hampshire to Pennsylvania. And letters. They're all letters. Now I wonder if they analyzed the letters to see if anything was handwritten and compared it to the letters of Debbie Quimby's.
I think so. In Debbie's letters, all of hers were typed, but it was handwritten envelopes, right? I do believe, and I could be wrong, just because I've consumed so much information about this case and about these cases. I do believe that both Alicia and Colleen's letters were actually handwritten.
Really?
Yeah. So, I mean, I suppose the handwriting analysis from the envelope could be analyzed, to the handwriting within the letters. I think while they were anonymous letters, I do think like the writing styles were very different in those letters as well. So one sounded like it was almost like someone who was like writing almost like a story of some sort. It was very descriptive. It was very
almost like a riddle.
Right. It was very artistic, apparently, the way they were like describing things. And the other letter was full of like misspellings, incorrect grammar. So
You know, could be intentional
that's what I was thinking too. That's what
to
I was
be
thinking too.
so far apart.
Yeah.
One's so articulate, and then one's so not articulate with
Hmm.
mistakes. That sounds intentional to me.
It does to me too. It was such a weird piece to find. So that exists out there. And that's why I called it out. Again, not saying that I actually believe that any of the cases could actually be linked, but it is an oddity, right? It's an oddity that actually exists in this case. Like, why were
Mhm.
so many anonymous letters being written about girls that were going
Mhm.
missing and some were murdered? Like, what? Around the Manchester, Bedford, Worcester area
Yeah.
in the early 2000s.
People just like to write letters all the time.
Hmm.
I, you know, you can't take away that there's a lot of people obsessed with disappearances and murders and unsolved disappearances and unsolved murders. People get obsessed like that.
Hmm.
And, you know, honestly, I take those letters with a grain of salt, open mind. Do they know anything? Could they know anything? Who knows? Look at it, give it a little bit of attention. If anything jumps out, then go for it. But uh, if they don't seem legit, I don't see any reason to put any time and effort into it. It's some people just like to insert themselves in cases like this for no apparent reason. They could probably have nothing to do with it. Don't know the families, don't know the victims, don't even live in the state, but they just want to insert themselves into an investigation like this. It happens all the time. But it's interesting that so many letters have come and nothing really came about them.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
I
Yeah.
have a hard time taking letters seriously.
Mm,
I'm going to be totally honest with that. I have
mm.
a really hard time taking letters like that seriously for my own personal reasons.
Yeah. I can understand that. Totally. Yeah. So unfortunately, to getting back to Debbie's case, both of Debbie's parents have passed away. So Debbie's father, Richard, passed away in September of 2006. He lost his battle with cancer. Before his passing, the police chief in Townsend actually wrote him a letter telling him he would never stop investigating Debbie's case.
Oh,
It's
wow.
Yeah, so the Townsend police chief that was quoted in a whole bunch of these, articles, apparently he had actually only been on the force for 2 weeks before this case happened. And so it's the case that has actually stuck with him. It's
Wow.
it's it's that case for him.
Do we have his name?
Yes. So Police Chief Irving M. Marshall Jr.
And he's still the chief of Townsend.
Well, that would actually, I'm not 100% sure if he is still the chief or if he's actually retired. A lot of
Oh,
these articles that I actually found where he was, forthcoming with his quotes and talking about everything, a lot of them were up until I think 2010.
wow.
20,
Okay.
so
15 years ago. So probably retired.
I would assume, but I can look that up.
Mhm.
Yeah. So the case stuck with the chief. He was fresh on the force. It was a case that bugged him. It was a case that like I said, he wrote Debbie's father a letter when he knew that he was passing. I said, I'm never going to stop investigating Debbie's case. Apparently, in the Townsend Police Department, the out, almost like in general public, or almost like displayed within that department, all the binders of all of the evidence clearly marked with the cases of Debbie and Judith actually exist in
Really?
there, just to remind everybody about these cases.
Good. Maybe they'll start doing some DNA testing and forensics.
Mm-hmm.
That would be great.
Yeah. Yep. That would be. And I wouldn't put it past them to be doing that. Like I think that they probably would end up doing that, especially with the stance and with how they have previously investigated this case. They probably are. So that would be great.
Unfortunately, with Debbie, though, they don't have any physical evidence to really test.
No, they don't.
Unfortunate.
However, so Debbie's mom, Anne, has passed away too. She passed away in July of 2022. She lost her battle with cancer as well. But I did read in an article that Debbie's mom did give the FBI her DNA. So,
oh, good.
Yep. So she gave her DNA. So if anything's ever found, there is DNA, there's comparable DNA to be able to positively identify Debbie, should anything be found. With a case that's old, it's weird to say that it's not cold, but I honestly don't know if it's cold or not. It sounds like, the police department just keeps on coordinating with other agencies and the FBI, and they keep on interviewing and re-interviewing and trying new angles. So I don't think they've given up.
No, it doesn't sound it. So if you know anything about this case, please say something. Go to the authorities. If you know anything about the letters, please come forward and go to the authorities. Amanda will post all the information for contact info. So we thank you very much for listening to Invisible Tears.
Thank you all for listening to this episode of Invisible Tears. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. You can find us on all platforms through our link tree in the show notes. There you can find our social media platforms, our YouTube, and our website with our merch. You can also find our Patreon there. So if you're interested in supporting and joining the Invisible Tears team, join our Patreon today. And as always, ratings and recommendations help our podcast in algorithms. So if you haven't shown us some love and given us a 5-star rating and review, please do so. We appreciate each and every one of you and your continued support.